Since the very, very beginning of Flesh and Blood, we've had the lore book. And in that book, many of the classes and professions have been outlined, which means that, since the beginning of Flesh and Blood, folks have wondered what each will do. And the one that has prompted more speculation perhaps than any other is the Necromancer. Something to do with recursion, for sure, but how would it work with FaB's core mechanics? And now that we've seen allies and heroes that utilize the Banish Zone, I think the stage is finally set for Necromancer. A huge shout out to our channel members for supporting what we do here. If you want to get involved with the channel and the Dice Commando community, please consider joining as a channel member. Remember, these videos are only possible with your support. You can show that support with a like, a subscribe, and by leaving us a comment and sharing your feedback. Community first, and go Commando. Hey there, my Flesh and Blood friends. Welcome back to Dice Commando and Go Again, a fabulous cast for the continuation of our kind of theory chats and exploration series, whatever you want to call it. Just some fun, short little videos that we've been doing and I've been having fun with making and thinking about, and hopefully you've been enjoying it as well. Now, today I want to specifically talk about the Necromancer class. Now, Necromancer is something we've known about since the beginning of Flesh and Blood, and I recall conversations back in the early days about, man, I'm so excited about Necromancer. What would that look like on the Facebook? And 80, 200 comments, right, of people theory crafting, and stuff's fun to do. So we're going to do it a bit, right? But one of the challenges in having that conversation was, when you think Necromancer, let's be honest, in TCGs, our head goes to black in Magic or something like that, where we're dealing with graveyard recursion, right? I mean, literally raising the dead, right? It makes sense, right? Some do something to put something in the graveyard and then raise them, right? But with Flesh and Blood, at least as it was back then, you're like, well, how the heck would that work? Playing stuff, playing actions from the graveyard, something like that. Yeah, could have worked. But now, what are we, 11 sets later, we have a lot better idea of how things are going to work here, right? So, or how things could work. And I think we have a chart kind of outlined for that. So the ones I want to reference first are the heroes Dromai and kind of our Shadow Runeblade folks, both of which have very unique defining mechanics. So Dromai has her dragons, right? That's Dragon Mommy is what everybody calls her. Extremely popular hero. And I do want to note, I want to thank Oates for my help with the backdrop. This is AI generated. He helped to do this, put a lot of work into it. I think it's awesome. This guy up above the skeleton. So thank you, Oates, and shout out for that. All right, so back to the Dragon Mommy portion of this. So hers is relatively simple. She has to create the ash tokens and then she has to generate ash, and then she has to turn that ash into dragons, right? That's her shtick, right? Something like that could be pretty easily translated with the Necromancer. You could do something where you create souls and then populate the souls or something like that. But that's basically just a one-to-one, right? So there'd have to be some sort of different spin on it. Again, with the idea of the Necromancer would be raising them from the dead. So, I mean, I think it'd be pretty easy to translate that you do something similar to Teklovasin from a certain point of view, where you can basically block with your stuff and then do something to put it in. I mean, in his case, he plays from Banish Zone, but he can, scrap them or whatever. But I hopefully you understand where I'm going with that, right? He could somehow block with this body, this skeleton body, whatever, and then consume a soul to put it on the battlefield as an ally or something to that effect, right? And it wouldn't really be too much of a stretch. You wouldn't really have to develop the rules much in order to make it happen, because we already have the ally rules. Again, it's not really much of a stretch for having a material underneath of the allies. It really ports over one-to-one. Then we do have, we have the Shadow Runeblade thing where their whole, and I'm not proposing the Necromancer has blood. He could, right? No reason he couldn't. But the Necromancer having, the point where I'm going with this is you don't necessarily need to utilize the Banish Zone. And in fact, utilizing the Banish Zone as a way to still have them, as a Necromancer, have an end, like a defeat plan, right? Maybe when the allies defeated, the card goes to the Banish Zone or something like that, and then, right? So he would play it from the graveyard, come then go to the Banish Zone, and then it's not playable again anymore, or something like that, right? Because you don't want to have some full-on remembrance type hero, because then it's just going to be, fatigue for days, right? And you really want it to be like this feeling of unending hordes, but you still want to be able to win at the end, right? You don't want them to just be able to keep coming at you forever and ever. So I think that between, having the concept of being able to play stuff, put stuff outside the game and then be able to play it from outside the game, and granted that's the banish zone for the shadows, and then generating materials by which we can use to convert our allies, I think we have a pretty reasonable path in which we can think of how LSS might bring us the Necromancer. So that's kind of where my head is something like a hybrid of like Dromai, Teklavos, and Shadow Runeblade to a certain extent. And maybe he has to pay life or trade life to get them. I mean, again, any number of ways that we could go, and I'd really love to hear y'all's thoughts on it and where you think it could go. But I think we certainly want to have like a battlefield full of skeletons, right? That seems, or zombies or whatever, right? Whatever floats your boat. I think that's definitely where we'd want to go with this, right? And I think allies are the way to do that. It's the easiest way to do that, I think, without having to change a whole bunch of mechanics. That's where my head is. So let me know what you're thinking. Nothing else, folks. Go Commando.